The letter trembled in my hands as I stood in Dad's old study, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. My dearest Schuyler, it began, I've watched you tend to those tomato plants every morning before school, and I know in my heart you'll make an incredible farmer someday. I'm Schuyler, and this was the letter my father never got to give me. I found it today, tucked away in his farming ledger, dated just weeks before the accident that took him from us. 5 years have passed, but the pain feels fresh as I read his words. Don't let anyone tell you farming is just for men. Your instincts for the land are better than mine ever were. A loud bang from downstairs jolted me from my thoughts. Schuyler, where are you hiding? Caleb's voice boomed through the house. I quickly folded the letter and shoved it in my pocket. Up here! My brother's heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. He filled the doorway, all 6 feet of him radiating irritation. What are you doing in Dad's study? Looking through his old records. I think I found a better rotation pattern for the south field. Not this again. Caleb cut me off, rolling his eyes. We've been over this. I'm running the farm now, and I'm doing it Dad's way. Dad's way included innovation, I argued, pulling out a notebook filled with my research. These organic methods could increase our yield by 30%. Farming is a man's job, Schuyler. Always has been. You're good at the farmer's market stuff, stick to that. The words hit like a physical blow. I have a degree in agricultural science. And I have actual experience, he snapped. The bank meeting's tomorrow. I'm buying out your share of the farm, and that's final. You can't do this, Caleb. This is my home too. Already done. He tossed an envelope on Dad's desk. Your check's in there. I expect you out by the end of the week. As he turned to leave, I called out, Dad wouldn't have wanted this. He paused at the doorway. Dad's not here. And you're not a farmer, Schuyler. The sooner you accept that, the better. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in the dusty study. I pulled out Dad's letter again, my fingers tracing his familiar handwriting. Your instincts for the land are better than mine ever were. Through my tears, a smile slowly spread across my face. Caleb might have the family farm, but he didn't have Dad's letter. And he certainly didn't have my determination. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd been saving. Hi, is this Simone White? I heard you're the best organic farming consultant in the county. I'd like to set up a meeting. You see that patch right there? Simone pointed to a small plot of land bordering my brother's farm. That's your future. I squinted at the overgrown acre, trying to see what she saw. The morning sun cast long shadows across the weed-choked soil. It looks abandoned. Perfect canvas. Simone's eyes sparkled as she walked the perimeter. The previous owner let it go wild, which means no chemical residue in the soil. We can start organic certification immediately. My best friend Angela joined us, clipboard in hand. The owner's willing to lease with an option to buy. Price is reasonable too. Reasonable isn't the word I'd use for my life savings, I muttered, but pulled out my phone to check my account anyway. The buyout money from Caleb sat there, taunting me. Look! Simone knelt, scooping up a handful of dark soil. See these earthworms? This soil is alive. Your brother's land, she gestured to the vast, perfectly manicured fields next door. Dead. Too many chemicals. He'll learn that lesson the hard way. A truck rumbled down the access road, and I tensed as it slowed. Beckett, the neighbouring farmer, rolled down his window. Heard you were starting your own operation, Schuyler. Word travels fast, I replied, straightening my shoulders. It's a small town. He glanced at the plot, then back at me. You're really going organic? Got a problem with that? He shrugged. Your funeral. But hey, when it fails, I might be interested in buying this plot. As he drove away, Angela put a hand on my shoulder. Ignore him. He's just another Caleb. No, I said, watching his truck disappear in a cloud of dust. He's motivation. Simone pulled out her tablet. Let's talk strategy. Small plot means we need to maximize every square foot. I'm thinking vertical growing systems, companion planting, and a greenhouse for year-round production. I can handle the marketing, Angela added. Farm-to-table restaurants are desperate for local organic produce. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Caleb says you're buying the old Miller plot. Don't throw away your money on spite, honey. I switched off my phone and turned to Simone. Where do we start? She smiled, handing me a stack of papers. With these organic certification forms, and tomorrow at dawn, we start preparing the soil. Looking across the small plot of land, my land, I felt something I hadn't since finding Dad's letter. Hope. Caleb might have the family farm, but I had something better. I had a vision. One more thing, Simone added, her expression serious. Your brother's going to notice when his best customers start coming to you instead. I smiled. Good. Your tomatoes are incredible. Chef Marcus held up one of my heirloom tomatoes, examining it like a jeweler with a precious stone. How do you get this flavour? Organic growing methods and the right soil biology, I explained, arranging more produce on my farmer's market stand. 3 months of back-breaking work had transformed that abandoned plot into a thriving garden. No chemicals, just nature doing its thing. Angela rushed over, practically bouncing with excitement. Skylar, the Golden Fork, just called. They want to double their weekly order. The look on Caleb's face from his stand across the market was worth every blister and sunburn I'd earned. He pretended to be busy with his own customers, but I caught him glancing our way every few minutes. Trouble in paradise? Martina, one of his farmhands, approached my stand. She picked up a bell pepper, turning it over in her hands. Half the crops in the south field are showing signs of pest damage. Caleb keeps increasing the pesticide concentration, but nothing's working. That's because the pests are becoming resistant, I said. How bad is it? Bad enough that he's drinking before noon? She lowered her voice. And the soil tests came back. The pH levels are all wrong, but he won't listen to anyone. A commotion interrupted us. At Caleb's stand, a customer was holding up a head of lettuce, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. There are worms in this. And look at these holes. Caleb snatched the lettuce away. I'll give you a refund. It's just been a bad season for pests. It's been a perfect season, I called out, unable to help myself. Right conditions, wrong methods. He stormed over to my stand, face red. You think you're so clever with your little organic garden? This is real farming. He gestured to his fields visible in the distance. Scale matters. So does sustainability, I countered. How's that south field looking? His jaw clenched. It's fine, just a temporary setback. Really? I pulled out my phone, showing him the latest photos Martina had sent me. Because these don't look temporary. You're turning my own workers against me now. No, your methods are doing that all by themselves. He leaned in close, voice dropping to a whisper. You won't win this, little sister. One bad season doesn't mean anything. You're right, I said, matching his tone. But 3 more seasons of this, that's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. As he stalked away, Angela sidled up next to me. You know he's going to retaliate, right? I watched him kick over an empty crate at his stand. Let him try. I've got science on my side. And karma, I thought, remembering Dad's letter. Sweet, sweet karma. The knock on my greenhouse door came just before sunset. I looked up from my seedlings to find Beckett standing there, hat in hands, looking uncomfortable. Your ladybugs are invading my farm, he said without preamble. I couldn't help but laugh. That's a new one. Usually people complain about pests going to their farms, not beneficial insects. I'm serious. He stepped inside, examining my vertical growing systems. Ever since you set up shop, I've noticed changes. Better pollination, fewer aphids, healthier soil. How are you doing it? The same ways I tried to tell you about 3 months ago before you predicted my funeral. I moved to check the irrigation system, but you weren't interested then. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Yeah, about that. I was wrong. Sorry, what was that? Didn't quite catch it. Don't push it. But there was a smile playing at his lips. Look, I've got 20 acres of tomatoes fighting early blight. Chemical sprays aren't working. Would you take a look? Before I could answer, the greenhouse door burst open. Martina rushed in, out of breath. Skylar, Caleb's losing it. He's spraying the south field again, even after I showed him the soil test results. Again? That's the third application this week. He's desperate, Beckett said. Words getting around about his crop failures. Banks don't like failure. I grabbed my jacket. Show me. We drove to the edge of Caleb's property. Sure enough, there he was on his tractor, sprayer attachment sending clouds of chemicals across his withering crops. I could smell the pesticides from here. He's going to poison the groundwater, I muttered. He already has, Martina said. Latest water samples came back with elevated toxin levels. I quit this morning when he refused to listen. I watched my brother making another pass with the sprayer, remembering how Dad used to say that the land would always tell you what it needs, if you just listened. Beckett, I turned to him. Still want help with those tomatoes? He nodded. Here's the deal. I'll show you my methods, but you have to implement them properly. No shortcuts. And when they work, you tell everyone who asks exactly how you fixed your blight problem. You're building an army, he said, understanding dawning on his face. I'm building awareness. Change doesn't happen in isolation. I looked back at Caleb's failing fields. Sometimes it takes a whole community to prove a point. He's your brother, Martina said softly. Are you sure you want to do this? I pulled Dad's letter from my pocket where I always kept it. He stopped being my brother the day he decided I couldn't be a farmer. Now he's just another stubborn man about to learn a hard lesson. Organic Farmer of the Year. Mom held up the local newspaper, her hands shaking slightly. Skylar, why didn't you tell me about this? I continued harvesting kale, avoiding her eyes. Didn't think you'd care. You've been pretty clear about whose side you're on. I'm not on anyone's side. She set the paper down and picked up a basket, starting to help me harvest. But your brother, he's in trouble, isn't he? You mean besides the EPA investigation into his chemical runoff, or the bank's final notice? You know about those? Small town mom. Everyone knows. I straightened up, wiping sweat from my forehead. Beckett's entire farm switched to organic last month. His crop yield is already up 20%. A truck engine rumbled nearby. We looked up to see Caleb's pickup screeching to a halt by my greenhouse. He jumped out waving a piece of paper. You did this, he shouted, storming toward us. You turned the co-op against me. Mom stepped between us. Caleb, calm down. The co-op voted to go organic only, he spat. 3 generations of chemical farming, and suddenly everyone's following my little sister's hippie methods? Your little sister's methods work. Simone emerged from the greenhouse. Your soil is dead, Caleb. Your groundwater is contaminated. And your stubbornness is going to cost you everything. Stay out of this, Simone. Or what? I stepped around Mom. You'll run her off like you did me. Good luck. She owns half the organic farms in the county. His face reddened. I built that farm up. You ran it into the ground. I grabbed the soil reports from my workbench. Look at these numbers, Caleb. Really look at them. Your topsoil is gone. Your beneficial insects are dead. You're one bad season away from bankruptcy. Skylar, Mom warned. No, he needs to hear this. Remember what Dad always said about listening to the land? Well, it's screaming at you, Caleb. And you're too proud to hear it. He stared at the papers, his hands trembling slightly. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The bank, he started, then stopped. Is calling in your loans? I finished. I know, they called me yesterday. His head snapped up. What? They wanted to know if I'd be interested in buying the family farm, at a significant discount. The colour drained from his face. Mom gasped. So what's it going to be, big brother? I crossed my arms. Are you ready to listen, or should I start making arrangements with the bank? The paper crumpled in his fist as he looked from me to Mom to his failing fields beyond. Finally, he whispered, What do you want? I smiled. I want you to remember exactly how this feels, because tomorrow, when we start fixing your mess, you're going to follow my lead. Every single step. Stop! I grabbed Caleb's arm before he could dump the chemical fertilizer. What did I just say about the soil? That it needs nutrients, he grumbled, lowering the bag. Living nutrients. Compost, not chemicals. I pointed to the steaming pile of organic matter we'd been building. This is your new best friend. This is ridiculous. He kicked at the compost pile. It'll take months to see results. Like the amazing results you're getting now, Beckett called from the fence line, where he was helping install beneficial insect habitats. Caleb's jaw tightened. Nobody asked you, traitor. Hey, I snapped. He's here helping because he's proof this works. His tomato yields are through the roof. My way worked for 30 years. Your way is why we're standing in a field of dead soil. I thrust a handful of dry, lifeless earth at him. Feel this? No earthworms, no beneficial bacteria, nothing living at all. You killed it, Caleb. You killed Dad's legacy. The words hung in the air between us. His face crumpled for a moment before he caught himself. The bank's coming tomorrow, he said quietly. If I don't show them a viable plan, you have one. I softened my tone. But you have to commit. No more fighting me on every little thing. A commotion at the farmhouse drew our attention. Mom was talking to someone, a suited man with a briefcase. That's not tomorrow, Caleb whispered, panic rising in his voice. That's now. Mr. Chapman, the banker called out, walking toward us. We need to discuss your payment schedule. I stepped forward. Actually, you need to discuss it with both of us. The banker looked confused. Miss Chapman? I wasn't aware you were involved in your brother's operation. I am now. I pulled out a folder of documents, soil rehabilitation plans, organic certification paperwork, and projected yields based on Beckett's success. We're transitioning the entire farm to organic. Here's our 3-year plan. The banker flipped through the papers, his eyebrows rising. These projected returns are conservative, I finished. Check with the co-op. My methods work. If, Caleb interrupted, you give us time to implement them. I turned to him, surprised by the use. The banker studied us both. The bank doesn't usually grant extensions for such dramatic operational changes. The bank doesn't usually face a choice between guaranteed failure and potential success, I countered. Which would you prefer? He closed the folder. You have 6 months to show progress. After that, we'll show you results in 3, Caleb said firmly. After the banker left, Caleb picked up a shovel and walked to the compost pile. Okay, little sister, show me how to fix this. I smiled, remembering Dad's words about my farming instincts. First lesson, the soil isn't just dirt, it's alive. Or at least, it will be. Look at this. I held up a clump of soil teeming with earthworms. 3 months of organic practices and they're already coming back. Caleb knelt beside me in the test plot, actually looking interested for once. The tomatoes here are healthier than anything I grew last season. That's because, I started, because the soil is alive, not just dirt. Yeah, I'm learning. He managed a small smile. Dad would have loved this, wouldn't he? Before I could answer, Beckett's truck came racing down the access road. He jumped out, waving a paper. You need to see this, he said, handing it to Caleb. They're planning to build a distribution centre right next to our farms. The rezoning meeting is next week. What? I grabbed the paper. They can't do that. The runoff would contaminate everything we've built. They can if nobody stops them, Simone said, walking up behind us. But a united farming community might have a chance. Caleb stood, brushing dirt from his knees. United? Half the farmers still think we're crazy for going organic. Then we show them, I said. The bank inspection is tomorrow. Our test plots are proving everything I promised. If we can demonstrate that organic farming is more profitable... It's not just about profit anymore, is it? Caleb interrupted, surprising me. It's about protecting the land. Dad knew that. Mum appeared from the farmhouse carrying a familiar piece of paper. Speaking of Dad, she handed me his letter, now worn from constant folding and unfolding. I found this in your jacket while doing laundry. Were you ever going to tell me about it? Caleb stared at the letter. What is that? Dad's last words to me, I said softly. About farming. About believing in me. His face darkened. Let me see it. Caleb, please. I handed it over. He read it slowly, his hands shaking slightly. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. All this time, he whispered, I thought I was protecting his legacy. But you were living it. We both can, I said. But first, We have to save the farm. Again. He straightened up, suddenly looking more like the brother I remembered from childhood. The distribution center. We'll need everyone's help to fight it. Everyone? I raised an eyebrow. Even us hippie organic farmers? Especially you. He handed the letter back. You were right about everything else. Maybe you're right about this too. Beckett cleared his throat. Not to interrupt this touching moment, but the rezoning meeting. Right, Caleb said. Skylar, what's the plan? I smiled, pulling out my phone. First, we call every farmer in the county. Then we show them exactly what we've achieved here. And then we fight, Caleb finished. Together this time. The motion to deny rezoning passes unanimously. The council chairman's gavel crack echoed through the packed town hall. The crowd erupted in cheers as the development company's representatives stormed out. We did it, Angela squeezed my hand. Your presentation on sustainable farming changed everything. I watched Caleb shaking hands with other farmers, beaming with pride as he explained our organic methods to anyone who would listen. The same brother who once told me farming wasn't for women was now bragging about his sister's agricultural expertise. Look at this soil structure, he was saying, pulling out his phone to show photos. 3 months of organic practices and the earthworm population has tripled. Simone nudged me. Created a monster, didn't you? A good one, I laughed. The bank approved our loan extension yesterday. Said our progress exceeded all expectations. Mum appeared with Dad's letter, now framed. This belongs in the farm office, she said, where everyone can see it. Speaking of the farm office, Caleb joined us, we need to make it official, Skylar. Full partnership, equal shares. I raised an eyebrow. Equal say in decisions? Equal everything. He held out his hand. Partners? Instead of shaking it, I hugged him. Partners. Beckett cleared his throat from nearby. Hate to break up the moment, but we've got that meeting with the Organic Certification Board tomorrow, and those restaurant contracts to finalise. Already done, Angela waved a folder. 5 new farm-to-table contracts, all asking for our premium produce. I looked around at my unlikely alliance, my once hostile brother, the neighbour who'd predicted my failure, my best friend who'd never doubted me, and my mentor who'd shown me the way. Even Mom had come around, proudly wearing an Organic Farming Family t-shirt. Dad was right, I said, touching the framed letter. The land tells us what it needs. We just have to listen. And sometimes, Caleb added, it takes a stubborn little sister to make us hear it. Little sister who saved the family farm, Beckett corrected. Twice. Little sister who changed farming in this county, Simone added. No. I shook my head, watching more farmers gathering around Caleb to learn about our methods. We all did this together. That's what Dad really wanted, for us to be stewards of the land, not just farmers. Caleb put his arm around my shoulders. Ready to go home? Those cover crops won't plant themselves. Home, I repeated, thinking of the farm that had almost slipped away, now thriving under our combined care. Yeah, let's go home. As we walked out, I heard one farmer say to another, maybe my daughter's right about those regenerative farming ideas she keeps talking about. I smiled. Change was happening, one farm at a time. And it all started with a letter, a dream, and the courage to prove everyone wrong.